Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
I do want to welcome to the program. We only have her for about 10 minutes, Marisa Silver, author of Mary Coyne. Marisa, thanks for calling. Oh, she disappeared. You there, Marisa? Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. This is what's so fun about live radio. I can't go ahead and edit this, and when it goes out in syndication, I can, and I'm with my co-host, Eric Remmel. And Marisa, I know you only have about 10 minutes, so I'll make sure we keep it quick so you can get right on to your next engagement at the Miami Book Fair, but I'm sure you're really excited to be there.
I am. It's a wonderful event.
Hi, Marisa. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Well, what was it like writing Mary Coyne?
It's the third novel, and I have 2 collections of short stories. So I will say that with every new novel I begin, I feel like I've never written a novel before. You feel sort of, stunned and blank in the face of the blank page. I don't know if there's any other job on earth where you feel that doing it over and over actually doesn't prepare you for the next one, but that's what it feels like. Because every story is its own, creation and has to find its own form. And this story, which is, a sort of fictionalization of the famous photograph Migrant Mother, taken by Dorothea Lange, I had to figure out how to fictionalize something that happened in history.
And how are you able to do that? A lot of research, I'm sure, Marisa, right?
Did a lot of research. I found out as much as I could about the life of the real photographer, Dorothea Lange, and the life of the woman in the photograph whose name was Florence Owens Thompson. There's not a whole lot to know about her. But then I wanted to really sort of move into a fictional landscape, so I used the information that I learned. Some of it I integrated into the stories of my fictional characters. And then I made up a lot of, events and emotional through lines for myself, because what I was trying to do was not so much tell the real story of those people, but to sort of imagine a possible story for those people, and in that way, explore the whole world of life during the Depression. And there's also a contemporary part of the book, which takes place currently, which is about a historian sort of looking backward and finding his way towards a connection to that photograph. So that's how I did it.
Oh, absolutely. And Eric, that's the interesting thing of the creativity of these authors. It's amazing.
It really is. I have the book actually here in my hand. I'm looking at the picture as we speak, and it's a dramatic story. I can only imagine the research that had to go into it.
Yeah, it was wonderful to do the research. It was wonderful to sort of learn about that whole period during the Depression, and also to investigate the story of how 2 women came to this fortuitous meeting place on the side of the road, created one of the most iconic images in American history, and then never saw or spoke to one another again, which was really poignant to me. And one of the things that drew me to writing this story was that the woman in the photograph never told people who she was, that she was that woman, until she was very old and sick and needed money for health care. And that was such a poignant piece of information to me, because it said to me that she had very complicated feelings about that photograph, and so I wanted to explore what those complicated feelings might be.
Well, absolutely, and it's something that is a quite interesting circumstance situation. So, what are you planning? Do you have a certain thing you're going to be doing at the Miami Book Fair? I know we only have like 10 minutes to talk to you. Where are you going
I'm
from
on
here?
A panel, and we'll be talking to whoever is there about the how I came to write the book, and I'll do a little reading from the book, and hopefully encourage people to not only find the book, but also to maybe explore that period of American history.
And I am such a huge fan of American history, and I'm sure that you learned a ton from your research, didn't you?
Yeah, I really did. I mean, obviously we all know about the Great Depression, but, to really investigate what particular lives might have been like during that time, migrant farmers in California, people in, the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma, people on the East Coast, who were hit by the Depression first. But, yeah, I mean, I guess my focus in the book is not so much history as it's really, people's lives and the emotions of these women's lives as they made their way through this period of time. The woman who's the photographer in the book obviously has a whole different story, which is that she, sort of found herself as an artist during that period and started creating photographs for the government, those WPA photographs that we're all familiar with. But it was a way of her sort of discovering what her voice was as an artist. So it was a way of thinking about history, about finding your artistic voice, about what it is to be an icon, an inadvertent icon, and thinking about all those issues.
At least in my experience or my opinion, we've lost a lot of that in teaching young children the impact of these images, pieces of history, because it's just not taught anymore. And it's exciting to see someone write a book about it.
They're not taught anymore? God, that's horrible. I think it's taught. I think that, kids, I have children, and so I think that, they certainly, their historic moments in their lives which are going to be very important are things like 9/11
Mm-hmm.
and the wars that we're involved in right now. I think those are going to be sort of the wars that they look back on thinking that those were the formative periods of their lives. Yeah, I'm sure that not as many kids, below the age of 15 are as familiar with that photograph as adults are, although I still, I see it in my kids' history books. It's always the photograph that is used to evoke the Depression, is that famous Migrant Mother photograph.
And
it was
really,
interesting to write the book also at the same time. When I wrote the book, it was, we were in the middle of the Great Recession. So it was certainly an interesting way of contrasting those two periods of time and thinking about, the kind of belt-tightening and kinds of deprivation that people were going through currently in contrast with what was happening in the 30s, which was probably more profound but not any more devastating for people.
Exactly, for certain people, and I think what Eric was talking about in American history, we teach it in schools nowadays is very just giving a snapshot out of it, not
Exactly.
real detail. And they do explain everything, and they do talk about the Depression, but yet they don't really go into the lives of it unless you're in a literature class or later on in your life you learn more about it. And I think that when you see the devastation, and I think what it was really interesting, Marissa, is to kind of parallel that with, like you said, our economic times now and so many people struggling through this, or even during any economic times, poverty in general, for sure.
Yeah, and the word you use, snapshot, is perfect because I think that we look at photographs and we sort of think, okay, well, that equals that experience. But what we don't really know is all the things that happened around the photograph. And part of what's interesting to me about writing about a photograph is to sort of explore not only what that image conveys to us, but what was really happening on the day that photograph was taken. What might have been the circumstances? What was that woman really thinking about? What was happening? What were her children doing outside the frame of that photograph? That's a kind of interesting way of approaching photographs. They don't just mean what the image conveys. There's a lot of hidden meanings in them.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. It's almost like a lot of these things I learned from my grandparents who experienced the Great Depression and talking to them and all the experiences they went through. So I just feel like a lot of it, like you said, is a snapshot of what truly happened.
Right. So this is a book, a way of not saying this is exactly what happened, but this is an imagining of a possible life that could have happened during that time. And one of the things I got to do in researching it was read a lot of firsthand accounts of people who had lived through those periods of time. And, they're very moving. And what struck me more than anything about all of them was the fact of people's incredible endurance. And I think that when you look at that photograph, what you see in that woman's face is not only exhaustion and desolation, but you also see this kind of grit and determination, which I think was true of so many people who made it through such incredibly difficult circumstances and endured.
Exactly.
And the endurance and the perseverance. And I think one thing we look at a lot of times, Marissa, is we look at poverty in a way that it will just destroy people, but yet it leads to resiliency. A lot of people that went through and struggled in the Depression were able to kind of overcome a lot of those things, thanks to government help, but also just the process of just keep on going, still have happiness through their struggles.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see it every day in the newspapers, too, when you look at photographs of what's going on in, say, a refugee camp or something. You think, these people are, it's incredible under these circumstances that people are enduring, and they do, because they want their children to grow up. It's kind of this primal instinct on all of our natures to want the next generation to have hope and possibility, and I think that's what makes people endure.
Hope and possibility, Eric. That's so key, especially when we're in this time and period in our history, Eric, where education's in the fight, healthcare is in the fight. We're fearful of where our country's going in certain aspects, especially both sides. So I think, Eric, kind of looking back at history, so key, especially the Depression, that we don't want people to struggle like they did now, even during the Great Recession, like the Depression.
Exactly. And I think people are all fearful of all those different changes and what's going on right now.
I think they're fearful of change, but everybody wants better, and they want better for their children, and they want better for the world, and so I think that's what makes us all sort of, lurch forward in our own herky-jerky way, this world that we live in.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and I know we're close to running out of time, Marissa, so I know you're pumped up about your opportunity to speak at the Miami Book Fair. Where can our listeners find more information on you, purchase your book, and learn more about you?
Oh, absolutely. They can go to my website, which is marisasilver.com, and you can find out all about all the books I've written, and there's links to all the bookstores and, find out all the information you want.
Absolutely, and I just tweeted you out as well at Marisa Silver, so you can check out information on her on Twitter as well. And we're just keeping it live on the Twitter feed and all that stuff. And it's so much fun. And best of luck to you. And I'd love to have you back on the Author's Corner when your next book comes out. So just
Thank
keep
you.
the
I really
line
appreciate
open.
it.
Just keep the line open, and we'll keep on going live. And you have a blast at the book fair, as we will as well.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.